Everyone pretends they understand how money moves now. We nod at words like Zelle, Venmo, ACH, pending, posted, and act like it's obvious. Meanwhile, money leaves instantly, lands days later, and we quietly accept that contradiction as normal behavior. Because this happens constantly, you send money to a friend and it disappears immediately. You get paid and it sits as pending until Thursday. A refund drifts for days. No one explains it. The apps smile. Statements stay vague. This quietly became daily life. What makes it disorienting isn't complexity. It's inconsistency. Outgoing feels fast. Incoming feels slow. The same dollar behaves differently depending on direction. That asymmetry feels personal, even when it isn't, because nothing signals why the rules changed midstream. A decade ago, the story felt simpler. Checks moved slowly because they were paper. Cards felt fast because a machine approved them. Cash was final because it changed hands. Today, everything is digital, but the timelines never merged. They stacked instead. That's the part most explanations skip. There is no single way money moves in the United States. There are rails, plural, built for different purposes at different times. Some favor speed, some favor reversibility, some favor verification, none prioritize impatience. Zelle and Venmo ride one set of rails. Debit and credit cards ride another. Paychecks, rent, and refunds often travel a third. When people say the money system, they're describing a patchwork that never received a unified map or shared clock. This isn't new behavior wearing new clothes. It's old infrastructure with modern interfaces. The phone updates instantly, creating the feeling of speed, even when the process underneath remains unchanged. The screen moves quickly. The ledger still takes its time. That gap is where confusion lives. You see sent and assume received. You see pending and assume held. You see a balance that doesn't match your math and assume an error. Usually no one made one. The system is simply mid-process. Part of the frustration comes from language. Instant doesn't mean the same thing everywhere. Neither does available, neither does cleared. These words sound final, but often describe a step, not a conclusion. The precision lives behind terms that feel casual. Because apps smooth everything over, the logic stays hidden. We're left guessing which transfers are final, which can be reversed, and which are still negotiable. That uncertainty breeds anxiety, not because money is gone, but because the rules remain unseen. So this is where slowing down helps. Not to master the system, just to orient within it. To separate sending from settling. To understand why some transfers lock immediately and others remain flexible by design and regulation. Once you see the rails, delays stop feeling arbitrary. They start feeling structural. Structure may be clunky, but it's easier to live with than mystery, especially when money seems to sprint away and return at a careful walking pace. The confusion usually peaks right after the first explanation. Someone says Zelle is instant, which sounds helpful until the next sentence adds that it can't be undone. Then debit feels immediate, except when it isn't. Credit feels fast but also slow, and paychecks lag behind expectations. Refunds drift for days. At some point, everything collapses into the same shrug. That's just how banks are. That shrug ends the conversation early, even though it's hiding something useful. The problem isn't randomness. It's multiple systems being mistaken for one. So slow it down without turning it into a seminar. Money doesn't move on a single system. It moves on several rails, built at different times for different priorities. Speed, safety, reversibility, verification. You rarely get all four at once. Start with Zelle and Venmo. These are push payments. When money is sent, the bank is instructed to push funds directly to another bank. There's no approval step and no pause. That's why it feels instant and why there's no real undo once it leaves. Speed is the feature, finality is the cost. The system assumes intention. That assumption removes friction, but it also removes safety nets. If a mistake happens, there's no chargeback waiting in the wings. The money already arrived where it was told to go. Debit and credit cards behave differently. A swipe or tap doesn't move money yet. It asks a network like Visa or MasterCard for approval. That approval appears immediately as pending, which feels final even though the actual settlement happens later in overnight batches. Pending means approved, posted means finished. The gap between them is where confusion lives. Credit cards add another layer because the cardholder isn't spending personal money at all. The issuer fronts the funds, which allows disputes and reversals if something goes wrong. That protection is intentional, and it slows things down on the back end. ACH works differently again. Paychecks, rent, utilities, and many refunds ride this system. ACH runs in batches, not continuously. Nights, weekends, and holidays pause the line without apology. When a paycheck sits pending and lands days later, nothing broke. It simply waited its turn. Gas stations add extra confusion by mixing systems. The pump places a temporary hold before the final amount is known, which makes balances look alarming for a while. The hold drops later. The money wasn't taken twice. It was reserved briefly to make sure funds existed. All of this gets harder because the language is loose. Instant, available, cleared, posted sound definitive, but they describe stages, not conclusions. Apps smooth these stages over because clarity feels slower than confidence. Once the rail is identified, the timing stops feeling personal. Push payments lock fast. Cards approve now and settle later. ACH moves by schedule, not urgency. The system isn't confused. It's layered. And once the layer under your feet is visible, the next step usually becomes predictable, which is far easier to live with than guessing why money seems to sprint away and return at a careful walking pace. At this point, the useful move is to stop treating the system like it's moody and start treating it like it's patched together. Money in the United States doesn't live on one timeline. It lives on several, built in different decades, for different reasons, by people who never expected them to share the same screen. That's not stinginess, that's history showing through. Once you see that, the irritation changes shape. It stops feeling like something is being done to you and starts looking like something that's simply happening around you. Zelle feels instant because it is. Debit and credit feel immediate because approval is immediate. Deposits feel slow because they still move in batches. None of those systems are lying, they're just answering different questions. We've handled worse transitions before without much ceremony. We adapted to dial-up tones that sounded like errors but weren't. We learned that ATMs didn't eat cards out of spite. We waited for paper statements to arrive before trusting balances. This moment isn't harsher. It's just quieter, faster, and layered on top of older habits. What helps now is vocabulary, not jargon for its own sake, but enough precision to keep conversations grounded. A push payment leaves immediately and doesn't come back. Network settlement happens after approval, not at purchase. ACH runs on Windows, not urgency. A hold is a reservation, not a withdrawal. Saying those words out loud changes how the whole thing feels. That vocabulary also changes how you talk to a bank. Calm beats clever every time. This was a push transfer. This charge is pending, not posted. This looks like an ACH deposit. Those sentences don't escalate. They clarify. The person on the other end knows which system you mean, and the temperature drops almost instantly. There's a quiet confidence in knowing which rail you're standing on. You stop refreshing apps. You stop assuming intent. You stop taking timing personally. You know when to wait, when to act, and when nothing can be reversed because nothing was designed to be. That steadiness doesn't announce itself, but it holds. Understanding doesn't mean liking the design. It means arguing less with it. Speed on the sending side is the reward for certainty. Slowness on the receiving side is the price of safety. Those values don't line up neatly, and they never have, even when the interface pretends they should. Once that clicks, the screens lose authority. Pending stops sounding ominous. Posted stops being mysterious. A gas station hold becomes mildly annoying instead of alarming. A Thursday deposit becomes predictable instead of insulting. The numbers stop feeling personal, which is usually the biggest relief of all. The larger shift is internal. You move from reaction to orientation. You're not chasing money around an app anymore. You're watching it move along known routes, at known speeds, for known reasons. That perspective doesn't make delays disappear, but it removes the guesswork that makes them sting. This isn't about mastering finance or becoming fluent in acronyms. It's about enough understanding to stay steady when balances lag expectations. Enough language to ask the right question without heat. Enough patience to let old systems do what they've always done, even when they wear new clothes. Trends will keep accelerating. Interfaces will keep smoothing things over. Money will continue to move faster in one direction than another. None of that requires panic or constant vigilance. It just requires keeping pace instead of trying to outrun systems that were never built for speed everywhere at once. That's the frame. This is Old Dog New Moves. I'll see you next time.